this orphan drug designation does significantly enhance the commercial appeal to prospective partners. As I mentioned, you get this 7 year of market exclusivity, and that brings a lot of value towards it. So very excited with that, and looking forward to updating our prospective partners on this news, of course. So, I mean, currently patients who receive, these cancer immunotherapies, these T-cell engagers, they have to go into these dedicated cancer centers for extended periods.
All right, welcome back inside our proactive newsroom. And joining me now is Jeremy Skillington. He is the CEO of Poolbeg Pharma. And Jeremy, it's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm very well, Steve. Very happy.
Yeah, I can imagine. The company out with some pretty significant news today that you've been granted orphan drug designation for POLB 001. So, for those people not familiar with the way it works in the US, maybe you can kind of explain what this drug designation means.
Yeah, absolutely. So very exciting news for Poolbeg this morning for this orphan drug designation from the FDA for POLB 001. So the FDA grants orphan drug status to support the development of medicines for rare disorders with that affects fewer than 200,000 people in the US. So it's an incentive program to get companies to develop into these rare diseases. So it gives Poolbeg clinical development and commercialization benefits, which is obviously very exciting for us. I mean, even commercially, you get a potential for 7 years of US market exclusivity when the drug is ultimately approved. And there's other additional incentives like, waivers of exemption of the prescription drug user fee application fees, which is about $2 million. And then there's tax credits for clinical trials as well. So fantastic, news for Poolbeg that came in there late on Friday.
Yeah, Jeremy, I guess this also is really a positive for you when you go out and talk to prospective partners as well, because having that your back pocket already is obviously a key major step forward.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've been generating some very interesting data with POLB 001. We have a clinical trial plan for later this year that'll we hope to generate more additional exciting data. But this orphan drug designation does significantly enhance the commercial appeal to prospective partners. As I mentioned, you get this 7 year of market exclusivity, and that brings a lot of value towards it. So very excited with that, and looking forward to updating our prospective partners on this news, of course. So, I mean, currently patients who receive, these cancer immunotherapies, these T-cell engagers, they have to go into these dedicated cancer centers for extended periods. And the challenge is, like, the drugs are very efficacious, we always say this, but they have this side effect issue of cytokine release syndrome. And if they develop this, then they have to stay in there longer. So again, that's kind of a challenge for both the healthcare systems and, getting patients through the systems. So what we're hoping with our drug is to reduce that level of hospitalization, you could say, and that benefits everybody. And right now, I mean, CRS occurs in about 70% of patients who receive these bispecific antibodies and CAR T cell therapies. And we're hoping to resolve that. And interestingly, last year we did some independent analysis, and we're looking, for CRS alone, about a $10 billion market. So if we could prevent CRS, a lot of issues go away, a lot of the need for hospitalizations, as I say, and we believe you'll increase revenue and generate additional revenue for the cancer immunotherapy drugs themselves. So we're kind of facilitating on multiple fronts here, so we see we can help the patients, but obviously help, generate revenues, not just for POLB 001, but for the cancer immunotherapies themselves. So, the prospective partners, they'll be interested in this without question.
Yeah, you mentioned value. Maybe some of the inflection points we should be aware of, just so we understand that.
Yeah, I mentioned a very busy year ahead for us. We're starting a clinical trial later this year, a phase 2A clinical trial. So this will actually be in patients. So we're planning to go into multiple myeloma patients, and we're going to give POLB 001 as a prophylactic preventative therapy to prevent CRS before they get their bispecific antibody. So, as I said, these are sick patients, but it'll be kind of an open label, single arm study. They'll be giving POLB 001 twice a day. And as I say, we're looking, as they go through their kind of dosing schedule for the cancer immunotherapy, they'll be getting our drugs as well. So about 30 patients we're selecting on that. So the trial will start in the second half of this year. We'll get interim data in the first half of next year, 2026, and then we'll have the top line data by the end of next year. So a very quick, very rapid clinical trial with data coming through, I wouldn't say daily, but, very regularly with data coming through. So we'll get a good read early on. And as I say, we've been very excited with the interest level from both the multiple myeloma clinicians. We've reached out to discuss, very interested in doing these clinical trials, And I think importantly, we've got some big pharma companies have agreed they're willing and interested to give us their bispecific antibody free of charge to run the clinical trial so that we get to see this data. So I think that's a great endorsement from big pharma companies that they see the potential, but they're also willing to kind of say let's go to spend their own money and spend their own material to get the results out here. So as I say, top line data at the end of next year, very rapid, and looking forward to then deeper partnering discussions after that. Because we talked to a lot of pharma companies and they'd like to see this data in patients. That's what we're going to do. And I say we look forward to updating the market, after that.
Yeah, and we should also mention that you raised just under $5 million recently. So will a lot of that go towards what you're talking about, the work that you're going to be doing this year?
Yeah, listen, that was that was a very exciting time for on the back of this orphan drug designation. We were working quite hard the last couple of months. Challenging times for fundraising especially in the biopharma space. But I said very excited to raise. It was like 4.865 million pounds sterling, so maybe over $6 million. But again, as I say, in these challenging times, so yeah, so that's going to go towards this kind of this clinical trial. I say the large cost of the clinical trial is the drug that pharma is going to provide. So obviously we're doing the background work to get the clinical trial up and running. So yeah, we'll kind of fund that aspect. I mean, on top of we also had 6.2 million pounds in the bank as of at the end of March. So, we're kind of a nice cash run around to 2027. So that gives us that, as I say, flexibility. Let's run this clinical trial and then begin the partner discussions thereafter. So, as I say, we're in a good shape. We're in good shape now to get these, programs moving. And even on top of that, we've got, we should mention, I mean, we've been very focused on oncology, but we've got an oral encapsulated GLP-1 program. So again, getting that into the clinic as well this year with data in the first half of next year. So that's moving quickly as well. So that's in 20 patients. We've got clinical trial sites selected, University of Ulster. Professor Carel LaRue is going to run the trial. He's kind of a very well noted metabolic doc here in Ireland, and he's going to run that trial. So lots of news flow coming, lots of data coming out, and as I say, Poolbeg with the orphan drug designation and the fundraise, I think we're in really good shape to move things forward and have an exciting 12, 24 months ahead of us.
Absolutely. No time to chat. You're too busy, Jeremy. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you too.
All right, Jeremy Skillington. He's the CEO of Poolbeg Pharma.